Twitter files 5, the removal of Trump, the president, thrown off the internet. This came from Bari Weiss. She's on Twitter at Bari Weiss. She's also starting a new organization called The Free Press at The Free Press or at The FP on Twitter. So be sure to follow her and all of the independent journalists who are doing the amazing work on this. Bari gets us started with a new thread. The Twitter Files, Part 5, the removal of Trump from Twitter. On the morning of January 8th, the day that Trump was tossed, President Trump, with one remaining strike before being at the risk of permanent suspension from Twitter, tweets twice. At 6:46 in the morning, Trump said the following: "The 75,000 great American patriots who voted for me, America first, and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form." Posted that January 8th, 6:46. Doesn't even say anything about the election, nothing about the frogs or anything involved at all. Pretty basic tweet, actually, for Trump standards, pretty basic. At 7:44 a.m., on the day of January 8th, Trump says the following: "To all those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th for Joe Biden." And that's the one that did it. For years, Twitter had resisted calls, both internal and external, to ban Trump on the grounds that blocking a world leader from the platform and removing their controversial tweets would hide important information that people should be able to see and debate. They posted this. They said, "Our mission," yeah, right, "is to provide a forum that enables people to be informed and to engage their leaders directly." The company wrote that in 2019. Twitter's aim was to protect the public's right to hear from their leaders and to hold them to account. Okay, so in other words, what Twitter has done here is lied. Now, I have seen a lot of people, many of them on the right, who've said things like, "There's no crime here. This is all a big nothing burger. There's no criminal intent. Nobody can prove anything. All of this is much ado about nothing." I think that is insane. I think that Twitter, this fraud has been on the magnitude of any other fraud that we've seen, if not considerably bigger than FTX, who Just Cause said was arrested in the Bahamas. We'll have to check on that. But it's bigger than FTX. It's bigger than Enron. This is a fraud on the level of an entire social media network, an entire society. The product at Elizabeth Holmes' company was blood. The product at FTX was crypto. Those investors got taken out. Those people who were involved in those companies got taken out. Twitter, their product is speech. They promised us this: provide a forum that enables people to be informed and engage with their leaders. Couldn't do that. They threw Trump off the platform. The company wrote, they also want to protect the public's right to hear from their leaders. Broke that oath too. So they defrauded an entire, if social media is to connect a society so that we can all interface with each other, they defrauded the entire society. This is not corporate level fraud. This is nation state level fraud. Nation state. And to just write this off as a joke is a real disservice to free speech. But they promised us, they had hearings, they did interviews, they told us none of this stuff was happening. It's all been proven true. But after January 6, as Taibbi and Schellenberger have documented, pressure grew, both inside and outside of Twitter, to ban Trump. There were dissenters inside Twitter. Somebody said, "Maybe I'm from China. I deeply understand how censorship can destroy a public conversation." They put this in the Slack channel. Red says, "Maybe because I am from China." Okay, somebody with some world context and experience. He says, "I deeply understand how censorship can destroy the public conversation. It's a disaster." And somebody responds and says, I wish they colored these differently, but somebody responds a couple days later. This looks like it's an internal thread. Or it's the same day, but a couple minutes later. It's a Slack channel. They say, "I understand this fear," pointing to the previous post. "But I also think it's important to understand that censorship by a government is very different than censorship of the government." Somebody said the First Amendment in the United States and similar legislation in other countries with similar concepts exists specifically to prevent the government from silencing the people. I respect that, but realistically, we impose far stricter rules on effectively everyone else on the platform. We started labeling restricting his tweets when they became a threat to democracy and seemed like that was our red line. Yesterday, he clearly attempted to overthrow our democratic system of government and showed no signs of remorse. These people are nuts. They were buying into the podium story. And they probably thought Brian Sicknick got murdered by MAGA insurrectionists as well. None of that was obviously true. So they're in the fog of war, but they're also, very likely hard lefties given the donation patterns that we've already uncovered. If this is not a clear reason to suspend him, again, as an unhinged ruler attempting to subvert the most powerful democracy in the world, I'm not sure what would be. So there's this debate back and forth. The only person who's actually ever experienced, ultimate censorship and who's lived in China in a dictatorial nation is saying, I'm a little bit concerned about this. The other people are very worried about their fifis and about red lines and about the podium evidently being commandeered. So Barry says, voices like that one appear to have been a distinct minority within the company. Across the Slack channels, many Twitter employees were upset that Trump hadn't been banned earlier. They wanted him banned hard and fast. After J6, Twitter employees organized to demand their employer ban Trump. They started forming little cabals. One employee said, there are a lot of employees and employee advocacy happening. Here's what it says. I am still struggling to understand the decision to not ban Trump altogether, given that he's inciting people to violence and that has led people to being killed. I think I owe people an explanation externally. So this Twitter employee is now ultimately, like ultra concerned that he's got to explain this to other people. He says, I work at Twitter. How can you work at Twitter and allow Trump to exist when he's such a monstrous insurrectionist? Another person said, yeah, this is the elephant in the room. We got to do something about this. It feels like the Twitter policy is engaged with someone acting in bad faith and we won't acknowledge it. Do we have any belief that Trump will stop tweeting incitements to violence? If Alex Jones was shut down for, quote, get your battle rifles, he's far exceeded that standard. I think a lot of people and a lot of employees must share these concerns. If there is any sort of channel or group we can organize to get more action, there's a lot of employee advocacy happening here and in other locations. And somebody else says, I understand he was our president and that he may have been the reason why we were hesitant to do it. But I think that January 20th, there's absolutely no excuse why his account shouldn't be suspended for good. I have friends with certain followers that have these concerns, 1,000 followers, and they've all been nuked and taken out. So that, of course, is the post from these Twitter employees, and they are now colluding to sort of remove him from the platform. All right. And so I'm taking a look. I'm getting some of the error that the YouTube's is not getting all of the streaming data or something. And the sound's off too. YouTube is buffering out. The stream's all good on locals, they say. All right, so we'll just keep going. Hopefully it fixes itself here soon. Barry Weiss says, we have to do the right thing and ban this account, said one staffer. It's pretty obvious he's going to try to thread the needle of incitement without violating the rules, said another. Here is the conversation from within the Twitter Slack. They write that last sentence, we have to do the right thing here and ban his account, multiple times repeated. They say, we don't have a good track record of acting on his account except in the clearest and most explicit of cases. Even then, in my experience, extraordinary circumstances demand extraordinary leadership. So they're just thrilled about this. It took 3 years, but I've lost faith. Somebody else said actual votes. Donald Trump, they're putting the vote numbers in there. And they say it's pretty obvious that he's trying to thread the needle of incitement while not actually violating the rules. So there's a lot of people jumping on the dog pile to get him removed. Weiss continues. She says, in the early afternoon of January 8th, the Washington Post published an open letter signed by over 300 Twitter employees to the CEO, Jack Dorsey, demanding Trump's ban. They said, we must examine Twitter's complicity in what President Biden has rightly termed the insurrection. Okay, so there's a little mutiny happening within Twitter. But the Twitter staff assigned to evaluate the tweets quickly concluded that Trump had not violated Twitter's policy. Said, I think we'd have a hard time saying this is incitement, wrote one staffer. They wrote, it's pretty clear he's saying that the American patriots are the ones for whom he voted, and then they're not the terrorists. Another staffer agreed, I don't see the incitement angle here. I see blank has pinged us to ask about incitement for the Donald Trump tweet, and I wanted to see if we can align. I don't see the incitement of fear. What PC could it be trying to incite fear about? Somebody else said, I think I'd have a hard time saying this is incitement. It's pretty clear he's saying the American patriots are the ones who voted for him and not the terrorists. We can call them that, right, from Wednesday. Somebody else says, I don't see the incitement angle here either. So they're actually having a little debate about this. And they're trying to hash it out. So Weiss continues on. She says, I am also not seeing clear or coded incitement in the Donald Trump tweet, wrote another person named Annika Navaroli. Says, I'll respond in the elections channel and say that our team has assessed and found no violations for the Donald Trump one. So she says here, I'm not seeing clear or coded incitement in the tweet. I'll respond in the elections channel and say that our team has assessed and found no vios for Trump. But I'm flagging that Yoel is. He's looking for an assessment of the tweet in a different crisis channel over in the HPDC crisis channel. Weiss says that she does just that. She says, as an FYI, safety has assessed that the Trump tweet above and determined that there is no violation of our policies at this time. So in other words, they've already made an assessment. Sorry, I stepped out for a while. Let me know if Yoel has any action on this, if anything will be taken. And as an FYI, safety has assessed that the Donald Trump tweet above and determined that there is no violation at this time. Later, Navaroli would testify in front of the House committee. For months, she said, I'd been begging and anticipating and attempting to raise the reality that if we made no intervention into what I saw occurring, people were going to die. So she's very much in the team, ban Trump camp. And says that next, Twitter's safety team decided that Trump's 7:44 a.m. tweet is also not in violation. They're unequivocal. They say it's a clear no vio. It's just to say that he's not attending the inauguration. Somebody dropped this one, 7:48. Hey, just dropping in to say that he tweeted again, but it's a clear no vio. It's just to say he's not attending the inauguration. Somebody else says, let me check. They throw the tweet in there. People are saying, and so he responds, he says, oh no, hold on a minute. People might be saying that this is the proof that he doesn't support a peaceful transition of power. And that all of this is incitement. He carries on. Barry says, to understand Twitter's decision to ban Trump, we must consider how Twitter deals with other heads of state and political leaders, including in Iran, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. So they're now sort of comparing and contrasting the two. In June 2018, Iran's Ayatollah named Ali Khamenei tweeted, Israel is a malignant cancer tumor, in the West Asian region that has to be removed and eradicated. It's possible and it will happen. Okay, so this person is obviously wants the entire country ripped off, of Israel wiped out. Says our stance against Israel is the same stance we have always taken. Israel is a malignant cancerous tumor, and that tweet was perfect. It's up there. Has to be removed and eradicated. They don't care. October 2020, the former Malaysian prime minister said it was, quote, a right for Muslims to kill millions of French people. They have no problem doing that. Twitter deleted the tweet for glorifying violence, but he remains on the platform. The tweet below was taken from the Wayback Machine. Okay, so they deleted this one. Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. Muslims have a right and to be angry and kill. So they took him, removed the tweet, but the Malaysian prime minister was not removed from the platform. Muhammad Buhari is the president of Nigeria, another world leader, incited violence against pro-Biafra groups, said something like, those of us in the fields for 30 months who went through war will treat them in the language they understand, right? That's like, we're going to go, take some war towards them. Twitter deleted the tweet, but didn't ban him. October 2021, Twitter allowed Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to call on citizens to take up arms against the Tigray region. Twitter allowed the tweet to remain up and did not ban the prime minister. They wrote this one here. Okay, he posted a tweet. This tweet violated the rules about abusive behavior. However, Twitter has determined that it may be in the public interest, right? That's that balancing scale to allow the tweet to remain on the platform. But they left it up there. So they didn't actually even delete it. They just put a note on it. In early February 2021, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the government threatened to arrest Twitter employees in India and to incarcerate them for up to 7 years after they restored hundreds of accounts that had been critical of him. So he was actually threatening Twitter employees themselves in India. Twitter did not ban Modi. Said, we'll take out your employees if you don't ban the accounts. They didn't do that. Twitter blocks accounts in India as Modi pressures social media. The platform's problem in the country offers a stark example of the difficulty of adhering to free speech principles amid government worries over its influence. So all these other world leaders are allowed to stay on the platform. Nobody cares at all. But Twitter executives did ban Trump, even though key staffers said that Trump had not incited violence, not even in a coded way. The tweets were not even that interesting. I'm just not going to the inauguration. But less than 20 minutes after Twitter employees had determined that Trump's tweets were not in violation of the policy, two different accounts, two different teams in Twitter. Twitter's head of legal, policy, and trust asked whether it could, in fact, quote, be coded incitement to further violence. We don't like your decision. We don't like the conclusion that you came to. Can you please reverse that? Can you please change that for us and make it so that it is, in fact, incitement so that we can remove him from the platform, please? Vijaya Gadi responds. She says the following. Okay, thanks, everybody. The biggest question is whether a tweet like that, the one this morning from Trump, which isn't a rule violation on its face, whether it's being coded incitement to further violence. If you have any context or insight we should consider, I'm all ears on this one. For example, the use of the term American patriots, says Vijaya. Scary. Patriot. Woo. And that the language that, quote, they will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form. 3 exclamation points on there too. Woo. So then Red responds. It's like, oh, great. Vijaya showed up in our chat. Perfect. So I can't tell her she's an idiot. So I'll just say this back to her. I'll say, this is an interesting question, Vijaya. I'm going to go speak with my team ASAP to see if we can run a quick survey. What? To get reactions to the language contained in the tweet and get back to you. Are you scared from this tweet? Does this tweet and these exclamation points from Trump, or do you think that the country is going to explode because of incitement to violence? That's what they do. That's the standard, right? They go around and they say, how was this being received? So they go take a survey of Twitter employees. Vijaya is like, okay, well, yeah, I'm not so sure I would rely on a survey, idiot. I worry about how that would be perceived externally. Yeah, no kidding. So she's not concerned about the results of the survey. She's concerned about how it's going to be perceived. Because everybody's going to say, where did your decision come from? Who'd you survey? Oh, a bunch of lefty Twitter employees who vote 99.9% Democrat. Okay, well, it doesn't seem like it's a very valid survey then to us. So Vijaya then responds and says, I wonder if we have anything in past research that could be relevant. We don't want to do a survey. Let's just go make up some other reason for this. So poor Red, he doesn't know what to do. He's like, okay. Well, so it sounds like to me, Vijaya, you want me to find a justification to get rid of Trump. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime, right? Because the laws are so overly burdensome and cumulative. Same things here. They're just making up the rules on the fly. So they're going around and trying to justify it. Barry continues. She says, a few minutes later, Twitter employees, after they got the memo from Vijaya, there's a company or an organization team called Scaled Enforcement Team. They suggest Perfect. Trump's tweet might fit in this little bucket. Called Twitter's glorification of violence policy. Oh no. If you interpreted the phrase American patriots to refer to rioters. So we're just going to say that all of these so-called insurrectionists are now the American patriots. Red responds, hey, Vijaya, Team Scale is asking if we would consider Trump's tweet for Gov. If we consider, quote, American patriots to refer to the rioters, then they have a point, at least from my point of view. He says, team, my laptop is frozen, but I'll be back in a minute. Now he comes back and he says, Scale has said that they understand our position, but they're going to continue to push their government assessment with leadership. They see it as that, quote, he is the leader of a violent extremist group who is glorifying the group and its recent actions. Somebody else says, do you think that we should square off GOV in the DJT Donald Trump assessment, or would it be helpful at this point? Annika, who we heard from previously, says, well, I think it would be helpful if maybe we have a write-up of a bio assessment that could look like, just in case Scale tips the balance and it becomes the decision. Like they're all trying to support, at least she is trying to support the decision with some logic. Things escalate from there, Ms. Weiss tells us. She says members of that team came to view him as the leader of a terrorist group responsible for the deaths and violence that led to a Christchurch shooter or Hitler. And on that basis and on the totality of his tweets, he should be deplatformed. So like total TDS hits, DEFCON 5. Everything is melting down over there. Somebody posts in Slack, they say, hey, just to update you, so-and-so, I spoke to blank just now. They understand our assessment of this individual tweet, but they now view him as the leader of a terrorist group responsible for the death and violence comparable to Christchurch shooter or Hitler. And on that basis and on the totality of his tweets, they say he should be deplatformed. They will continue to push that argument with leadership and, well, we will see where it falls. Okay, so this is looking like it's coming back to another team. And there were already two teams who said it's not a violation. So just to update you, I spoke to Vijaya just now or whatever, right? All of it is coming down the grapevine. Ms. Weiss says 2 hours later, Twitter executives, they say, great, get everybody on the phone. 30-minute all staff meeting. Jack Dorsey and Vijaya answer questions about why Trump wasn't banned yet. Employees are screaming at him. There's an insurrection that happened. He almost let that guy walk off with the podium. He said a bunch of same things that the Democrats said about fighting. We got to get rid of him. So Jack and Vijaya are like, okay, let's shut up everybody here. Just, okay. Well, we've got an obligation and blah, blah, blah. Employees are just getting angrier. They're like, this is ridiculous. We need action now. Multiple tweets, Twitter employees, have quoted the banality of evil, suggesting that people implementing our policies are like Nazis following orders. So it's a meltdown. Okay, TDS level 30 million there. Red post in the Slack channel to Yoel. He says, hey, Yoel, I'm not sure who should hear this, but if you look at the conversation in this other channel, plenty of employees are not responding well to that 30-minute brief from Jack and Vijaya. I feel people want to be heard and having someone with the right purview to reason with. And yet I'm sure that Jack and Vijaya are totally saturated. So I wonder if we can mobilize people who are on the peripheral of decision making, but not all consumed to engage with internal discussions. Can we form a union is what this red person is saying? Because we're unhappy. Yoel says, yeah, ... Right. So that's sort of like, I agree with you on everything you said. Yeah. Acknowledging. I hear you. I've been keeping an eye on it, he says. Candidly, not a lot of people who are close to the decision would feel safe engaging there. Multiple tweets have quoted the banality of evil, suggesting that people implementing our policies are like Nazis following orders. So Yoel presumably means that's him, right? Oh, Yoel, you're a Nazi. All you're doing is taking whatever Jack and Vijaya told you to do, and you're just implementing that. And that implementation is resulting in the allowance of an evil dictator named Donald Trump, who tried to undermine and insurrect American democracy, to roam free around the countryside of Twitter. And if you don't ban him, then you're just following orders like the Nazis did. So Yol says, well, as someone responsible for our policies who had direct family members in Auschwitz, he said, that's not exactly an environment I want to wade into. People are angry and they want to express themselves, but the way the conversation happens can close off meaningful engagement. So it sounds like he doesn't want to cancel the people there. He's okay canceling Trump. Dorsey requested simpler language to explain Trump's suspension. Roth wrote, did we skip something here? Roth wrote, God help us. This makes me think he wants to share it publicly. So if somebody says this, if we get close to suspension and an analysis of 8chan or Parler is part of the decision, any links to that content would be helpful for us with Trusted. If possible, I'd like those services to pay a price here. Roth says, yep, noted. Dell is rewriting the doc per the request from Jack to make it, quote, simpler, which, God help us, makes me think he wants to share it publicly. So they're getting excited. They're getting close to banning Trump is what it sounds like. 1 hour later, Twitter announces Trump's permanent suspension due to the risk of further incitement of violence. So that happens very quickly. Wow. There's a meeting. There's a meeting at Twitter. 30-minute all-hands staff meeting. Employees go psycho. Start calling all of the Twitter executives Nazis. Yol says, I don't want to be a Nazi. Something's happening behind the scenes because very quickly then Dorsey apparently has made the decision to nuke Trump. He requests simpler language to explain Trump's suspension. Roth wrote, God help us. This makes me think he wants to share it publicly. 1 hour later, Twitter announced the permanent suspension. Many tweets at Twitter were ecstatic. In the Slack channel, Team DJT is suspended! 3 exclamation points. OMG! Oh! This guy looked, 15 different exclamation points. Another person, oh! He's got 4 exclamation points. It's going crazy. Everybody's having a field day. Another person, 6 exclamation points. This person very astutely says, well, this feels like a piece of history. Yeah, it is. Not a good one. You're on team censorship. Hopefully you're having fun with it. Somebody else says, it is. Yay. We threw a sitting president off. Whoa. And then we get an actual comment, right? Everybody's sort of high-fiving each other like a bunch of middle schoolers. And then they say, saw the message. Thank you, everyone, for your impactful work this week, for the discussion, and for drafting all of these complex assessments. There was nothing complex about it. Okay. All they were doing was just trying to make the rules up there was no policy violation. They even admitted it. Said, I'm very proud to work and learn from you every day. Wishing you a good weekend. Right. So they're all just ecstatic, running around, having a ton of fun. There's a congratulatory big props to whoever in trust and safety is sitting there whack-a-moling these Trump accounts. Probably Yol Roth and the other long con guy. Can we get one of these awesome cards I've heard about? Definitely some extraordinary acts of awesomeness going on around Twitter right now. And look at somebody else here at the bottom. Why don't we get Don Jr.'s account too? Lock his ass too, they say. It's like a bunch of, kids in the candy store. They're all just giddy as can be. This is what they work for. This is how they're going to impact change in the world, by censoring other people, by throwing their political enemies off their platform. They've captured the flag and they're going to control the town square. By the next day, employees expressed eagerness to tackle medical misinformation now as soon as possible. They're high. They're like, yeah, I can do this. We can do this. No problem. They got on their Twitter threads. They were probably all sending group messages. It was like a field day. Somebody posted in Slack. They said, yeah, what Red said. Yes, we absolutely plan to do this in 2021 with the timeline being, quote, as soon as possible. COVID is one specific disease, but medical misinformation is a much broader category of harmful content. We've laid a lot of the groundwork for policy and product behavior through our work on COVID and the election, the misinfo policy team, and trust and safety, along with other folks in the health experience and other entities. Other teams across the company are now focused on getting to a place of improved maturity in how our policies are actualized. We'll have more to share soon. Thank you, says everybody say on January 9th. So extremely excited about it. They're making good progress. Somebody else writes, for the longest time, I'm very excited to see us handling more categories of this. For the longest time, Twitter's stance was that we aren't the arbiter of truth, which I respected, but it never gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling. I want to be the arbiter of truth, says this person. I am very smart and I get to decide for everybody. That said, this person says, my dad is an MD, to give context. So this person's now an official expert. And medical misinformation is a really hard topic. Okay, this is like, my dad's a lawyer, so I know. My dad invented electricity, by the way, so I know everything about it. He didn't, by the way. Even for COVID-19, we only covered a narrow category of information. As an example is take vitamin C, take vitamin D, elderberry, right? Example, I'm not giving medical advice. Or xylitol to reduce this. Some of that is information. It could be creative marketing. Could it be misinformation? How do you distinguish between take your vitamins and misinformation? And so he says, personally, I'm not sure, and I suspect there are views on both sides. So his dad's a doctor. Maybe we should put him in charge and learn the science. Okay. So, but Twitter's CEO at the time, remember Parag Agrawal? He got nominated to be the CEO after Dorsey left. Prior to that, when Dorsey was there and authorized the removal of Trump, COO Parag got on there. He later succeeded Dorsey. He told the head of security, somebody named Mudge, he said, I think a few of us should brainstorm the ripple effects of this ban, Centralized content moderation has reached a breaking point now. Here's the conversation. Parag says, hey, Mudge, I think a few of us should probably get together and think about the consequences of what we've done. Maybe brainstorm the ripple effects and the potential fragmentation of public conversation. Yeah, because when you ban an entire entity, right, and everybody was going to Parler at that time, and remember what happened after that? Amazon nuked Parler. And then they re-signed a deal with Twitter, their competitor. All the tech bros were colluding on this. They knew exactly what they had done. They did it intentionally. I think we should brainstorm, somebody says, and how we might adapt. Mudge says, what are you suggesting, Parag? Not sure. A few of us on staff, maybe to start. The future of public conversation feels uncertain to me. Yeah, because you wrecked it, idiots. He says, to my mind, we need to move fast forwards, opening up control over policies and enforcement and decentralizing it. Centralized content moderation, in my humble opinion, has reached a breaking point now. Yeah, because these are little, right? These are the micromanager communists, right? If you want to use an economic model, the people who think that they can control every facet of a society. You produce this much corn, you produce that much lettuce, you produce this much wine, and you all exchange it. We're going to exchange it for you, and we're going to manage everything for you. Ultimate centralization. Same thing Twitter was doing. It's unmanageable. That's why communism is a joke and it fails. That's why Twitter was a joke and it failed, because these people, just like the last Twitter employee said, they want to be the arbiters of truth. You can't do that and scale that. That's why a baseline is appropriate. That's why the founder said, let's put the First Amendment first. Weiss says, outside the United States, Twitter's decision to ban Trump raised alarms. French President Emmanuel Macron was upset. German Prime Minister Angela Merkel was also upset. And Andres Manuel Lopez out of Mexico also was concerned about this. Macron told an audience that he didn't want to live in a democracy where the key decisions were made by private players. Macron is exactly right. What kind of a democracy is it when a private company can just silence the speech of an entire nation state, an entire country? Macron said, I want it to be decided by a law voted by our representatives or by regulation or by governance, democratically discussed and approved by democratic leaders. Yeah, makes sense. Pretty good concept there, Emmanuel. Weiss says Merkel's spokesperson from Germany called Twitter's decision to ban Trump from its platform problematic. Yeah. And added that the freedom of opinion is of elementary significance. Yeah, it's pretty basic. They don't teach it in elementary school anymore, evidently. At least they didn't to Yoel Roth or to Vijaya for whatever reason. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who's rotting away in a Russian prison, he criticized the ban as well as an unacceptable act of censorship because it was insane. So Barry says, whether you agree with Navalny or Macron or the executives at Twitter, we hope that this installment of the Twitter Files gave you insight into that unprecedented decision. From the outset, Ms. Weiss says our goal of investigating this story was to discover and document the steps leading up to the banning of Trump and to put that choice in context. Ultimately, the concerns about Twitter's efforts to censor news about Hunter Biden's laptop, to blacklist disfavored views, and to ban a president aren't about the past choices of executives in a social media company. Instead, they're about the power of a handful of people at a private company to influence public discourse and democracy. That's from Miss Bari Weiss. She tells us that this was reported from Schellenberger MD, Isaac Grafstein, Snoozy Weiss, shout out to Snoozy. Also, Olivia Reingold, Peter Savanadik, and Nellie Bowles, all over at the Free Press. And of course, they are there at the FP. And so make sure you're following them. I'm already following them. Probably a good follow. Good to follow all these other people too if they're doing this work here. So we want to support our free speech journos out there. And if you're on Twitter, of course, making sure you're doing the same thing. So Barry says, please check over here to subscribe to the Free Press. Continue reading and support the independent journalism. And that, my friends, is it for the Twitter Files 5. The removal of Donald Trump. The celebration of the tweets of the Twitter employees. Giddy as can be. Because their big dream, stuff that they worked for every day, has finally come to fruition.